Right friends, welcome back to Editorial Discussion. Today I have taken 5 articles of the Hindu and about Rail Development Authority of Saturday. I am going to deliberate sometime this week, maybe tomorrow or day after. And today's 5, one is none for the road. The Supreme Court should examine the consequence of its order on the liquor trade and amend it. So, this editorial today strongly feels that Supreme Court must amend its order of this 500 meters restriction from national highways and state highways. Already some of the states started converting state highways into district roads, and they are changing the classification to circumvent the Supreme Court instructions. That is already going on, and I have listed out the Supreme Court liquor ban proponents and opponents. Actually, this is no doubt in the purview of executive domain, or you can say this is the responsibility of executive. If Supreme Court is looking at each and every issue in this way, probably Supreme Court is required to intervene in several aspects of governance today. So, the proponents says liquor on highways is resulting in several deaths on the roads. So, it is the right move. The second point is state, that means the government is not able to control the proliferation of liquor on the highways. Hence, Supreme Court intervened under Article 142 to do complete justice. This is one view. So, as I have already told you, if Supreme Court thinks with this perspective, then it is required to enter into several domains of executive. Then, when it comes to human lives, right to life is fundamental than anything else. When people are losing their lives because of liquor available on the state highways and national highways, this assumed significance. State is not able to control drunken driving. Liquor is outside the idea of commerce. It exists solely at the discretion of policy makers without any concomitant fundamental right that other businesses enjoy. So, when you look at the rights of other businesses, they are different from the rights of businesses like liquor, because it involves human safety. Road accidents are crippling several families, hence it is the need of the hour. This is proponents' view of the Supreme Court liquor ban. So, they are supporting the Supreme Court liquor ban, and most of the people are opponents. There are several aspects involved in this. One is whether Article 142 can be invoked here or not, that is one thing. Then second point is why the Supreme Court is entering into the executive domain when basic doctrine of the Constitution says that the three wings must be independent, and one side it has struck off National Judicial Appointments Commission, and on the other side it is entering into the domain of executive. So, this is the majority view. In fact, it is within the executive domain and cannot come under Article 142 as a policy matter. States have to decide whether prohibition is to be imposed or not. When states are getting substantial income because of this liquor sale, and when states are using this liquor income on education and health, so how the Supreme Court will decide? Then, if the Supreme Court feels that road accidents are on increase, then it can very well advise to provide breath analyzers and strict measures. Let on national highways every 50 kilometers there is a mechanism to test the drivers whether they are under the alcohol influence or not. So, let us impose this breath analyzers every 50 kilometers, and at the same time let us check the drivers quite stringently. When the ban is imposed up to 500 meters, they can very well take liquor beyond 500 meters. States are permitting junk food and tobacco products. States are permitting junk food, which is the main reason for several cardio diseases, heart diseases, And can the Supreme Court intervene in the name of causing complete justice to the people? Then several lives are lost because of polluted rivers. Polluted water is one of the main reasons for losing lives in our country, and untreated sewage is being let into the rivers. And India only 30% of sewage, that means India has got capacity of treating only 30% of sewage, and out of that also almost 50% of sewage treatment plants do not function. So, in India literally only 15% of sewage is treated and remaining 85% is untreated, and it is going into the rivers, and it is one of the main reasons for losing lives by the people. So, can Supreme Court enforce this? By applying same logic, then Supreme Court can enter. Then where is the limit for such judicial overreach? State is failing in several aspects, not only in one aspect. State is failing in several aspects. Till date, not all the provisions of National Food Security Act are implemented. At the same time, right to education, still several people are out of schools. So, if you look at the state's failure, Supreme Court can enter into several domains. Can Supreme Court enter into all the domains? So, these are all the questions which are difficult to answer. So, this cannot be the, or you can say state's failure cannot be the reason for violating the power balance as enshrined in the constitution. So, there are strong points. Basically, state has to enforce. Look into the next one. A reckless intervention. American airstrikes on Syrian airbase. All of you are familiar with the news item. Several people, more than 80 people lost their lives in the chemical attack in one city in Syria. In one city in Syria, several people lost their lives because of chemical attack, and there is a suspicion that the Bashar al-Assad led government is responsible for chemical attack. And Donald Trump immediately after seeing the pictures of babies who lost their lives in the chemical attack, immediately resorted to missile attacks. We discussed last week Arab Spring. Arab Spring started in Tunisia. Only that country is now having stable democracy. All other countries failed. If you look at Libya, Syria, Yemen, all are into problems, right? So, Syria crisis, last week we discussed, 2011 it started, some teenagers were arrested, and subsequently the developments led to almost death of around 4 lakh people, and before Syrian crisis the population was around 22 million. The population of Syria was around 22 million. Now it came down to almost 17 million, 22 million to 17 million. Around 4 to 5 million crossed the boundaries and staying as refugees. 4 lakh people lost their lives, and 3 actors are there basically in Syrian crisis. And these are various groups in Syria. In addition to these groups, totally it tantamounted to 3 actors. The first group is government group. Government group is supported by Shia-led countries, and lately it was supported by Russia. Now Russia is backing Bashar al-Assad along with the Shia-dominated countries. Support from Iran and other countries where Shias are in majority. So, here Bashar al-Assad belongs to Alawite sect, which is Shia sect. So, this first group you can say is a prominently Shia group supported by Russia. If you look at second group, several rebel groups were formed in Syria. These rebels are basically Sunni, and these are supported by Saudi Arabia and GCC countries. Saudi Arabia is prominently Sunni led country. So, Here Sunni group of countries are supporting this rebel groups, and United States of America and West is supporting this second group. So, this is the first actor in Syria crisis. These are the second actors in Syria crisis, and the third and most violent actor is Islamic State. Seeing the vacuum, it occupied some of the areas in Syria and some of the areas in Iraq, and lawlessness is prevailing in some parts. But in recent times, what happened? After the entry of Russia, the scales were tilted towards Bashar al-Assad. Now, the scales, that means the entry of Russia strengthened Bashar al-Assad, and subsequently rebel groups were weakened, and Islamic State was also weakened to some extent in Syria and Iraq. But the important point is Islamic State is spreading to several countries. The frightening aspect is Islamic State is spreading to several countries now, and yesterday's incident in Egypt, where 40 people were died when Islamic State militants attacked Coptic churches in Egypt. So, it is spreading its tentacles not only to Bangladesh, not only to Afghanistan, not only to Egypt. So, it is spreading its tentacles, and it is active in some European countries also. Several terrorist attacks are taking place in European countries, right? Under these circumstances, what happened? This chemical attack incident further strained relations between Russia and USA. This is the news item. There were chemical weapon attacks in one of the towns. At least 80 people were killed. Strong suspicion that actor number 1 used it. I will call them actor number 1, actor number 2, actor number 3. You will easily understand. Actor number 1 is Russia, Bashar al-Assad government and Shia group of countries. Actor number 2, Sunni group of organizations, Saudi Arabia and its friends and Western countries. Actor number 3 is Islamic State. So, these 3 actors entirely spoiled Syria. They caused death of around 4 lakh people, and at the same time 4 to 5 million people migrated from the country. And the United Nations in this aspect is almost dead, right. So, here subsequently USA launched cruise missiles on the airbase. In retaliation, Russia is sending a warship to the Mediterranean and threatening to halt the peace process. Right. Now, how to view the USA's action? Here, the USA's action, actually, as I have already told you, 6 years of civil war claimed 4 lakh lives and millions of people displaced. Now, there are some signs of ending the civil war, and opposition forces as well as Islamic State were weakened, and this will further escalate the conflict, claiming more and more civilian lives. Here, except in case of self-defense, countries cannot attack other country. So, this is against United Nations Charter. So, USA violated that charter. Then Russia is supporting Bashar al-Assad, and this may further strengthen relations between Russia and Syria led by Bashar al-Assad, and at the same time it will have adverse effect on the relations between USA and Russia. So, removing Bashar al-Assad forcibly, if it happens, if Bashar al-Assad is removed, then a total anarchy may prevail in Syria. Several groups may be radicalized, and ultimately people will suffer further. So, the need of the hour is to go for peace process. At the same time, there should be phased transition from Bashar al-Assad without further causing damage to the Syria, right. Then the primary focus at this juncture must be to end the civil war and not to ignite the passions further. Then clarity and facts on the ground. Aadhaar. This article argues several important issues pertaining to violation of certain aspects. They may be constitutional issues or the issues pertaining immediate importance. They are in Supreme Court, but the delay of Supreme Court, if the Supreme Court delays, important issues where constitutional violations are involved, where the rule of law is violated, when the matter went to Supreme Court, when Supreme Court delays 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, then it ultimately indirectly benefits the government. So, in Aadhaar case, this article clearly argues, in Aadhaar case, the Supreme Court is somewhat inaction is there, right. So, here this is about Aadhaar, the matter went to Aadhaar, but Supreme Court is not acting fast. By that time, Aadhaar will be implemented to almost all the spheres and state will become surveillance state on the citizens. Supreme Court should wake up very early and look at various issues concerning right to privacy, right. So, privacy means legal requirement to protect a customer or client's privacy. This is the legal requirement to protect customer or client's privacy, and Aadhaar Act last year it was passed, and section 7, section 29, section 33. Section 7 clearly says proof of Aadhaar is mandatory for various services. As per section 7, government is implementing various Aadhaar linkage programs. Government has got a full mandate as per this Aadhaar Act. Proof of Aadhaar is necessary for receipt of certain subsidies, benefits and services. So, government can make them mandatory, and at the same time section 29(4) says that no Aadhaar number or biometric information will be made public, and section 33 says under what circumstances this confidentiality clause can be violated. So, this is broadly about Aadhaar Act. And now Aadhaar and Supreme Court. The matter with regard to right to privacy went to Supreme Court in August 2015. In August 2015, the matter pertaining to right to privacy went to Supreme Court, and the 3-judge bench headed by Justice Jasti Chalameshwar ruled that there was a substantial confusion on whether the constitution guaranteed citizens a right to privacy. The 3-judge bench stated that there is confusion. There is confusion whether the constitution guarantees right to privacy or not. Subsequently, he said the case had to be placed before larger bench of appropriate strength to be determined by the Chief Justice. At the time, it was also felt that it would be desirable to have the case finally heard at the earliest. So, here 2015 August, Supreme Court bench, 3-judge bench felt that there are several issues involved here. Right to privacy is the main issue. So far, there is a lot of confusion. It is guaranteed to the citizens or not. So, to look at this fundamental point, the issue is required to be given to the larger bench, and at the same time Justice Chalameshwar also said that it is to be solved at the earliest. 1.5 years passed, and government is making Aadhaar mandatory for more and more schemes, no action from Supreme Court. In between, court granted interim orders to restrict the use of Aadhaar for only particular schemes. In between, Supreme Court has said that to restrict the use of Aadhaar for only particular schemes, simultaneously it also felt that no citizen could be deprived of the benefits for the want of Aadhaar. These two are important developments. So, it restricted the use only to certain schemes, and at the same time it said that no citizen could be deprived of the benefits for the want of Aadhaar. So, for the past 1.5 years, government made mandatory to have Aadhaar for more and more schemes, and government left and right linking Aadhaar to various aspects of human life. So, what the Supreme Court is doing for the past 19 months? When important constitutional aspect is noted by 3-judge bench of the Supreme Court, then why the Supreme Court is silent for the past 19 months? When some issue involves constitutional aspects, then how can the Supreme Court sit silent for 19 months? Then Supreme Court is also silent whether the extension of Aadhaar constitutes a contempt of courts previously granted interim orders. Supreme Court is also silent. Recently, it gave some oral orders, and government is going aggressively for imposition of Aadhaar. By the time Supreme Court gives its judgment, we may reach a stage, probably Supreme Court may give judgment in 2019 or 20. By that time, we will be in such a situation, or you can say irreversible situation or irredeemable situation, or you can say irreversible situation. By that time, government will impose Aadhaar for most of the schemes, and the state will become surveillance state. State will look at each and every movement of the citizens. So, Supreme Court has to look at important aspect. Time is running out. When such constitutional aspects are involved, Supreme Court should act fast. Now, the fundamental questions are, as per the constitution, the Supreme Court is to look at the aspects pertaining to the legitimacy of legislative and executive acts. Whether the legitimacy for legislative and executive acts is there, or you can say law of the land is permitting these acts or not, whether it is violating anything. So, these things must be looked after by Supreme Court only. In case of demonetization also, government already implemented demonetization, and case is still with the Supreme Court Constitution bench. What the Constitution bench will do now? Central government already imposed it, already demonetization is over, remonetization is also taking place. Now, what the Supreme Court will give verdict or judgment, whether it will have any relevance if it is given after 1 year or 2 years. So, the article argues whenever government actions are involving some violations with regard to the citizens' rights, Supreme Court must act immediately, right. So, if at all Supreme Court is delaying the judgments on constitutional issues, it is virtually favoring the government. K.M. Munshi, a member of the Constituent Assembly, had pointed out in 1947 that it is of the highest importance that the question whether a law is valid or not must be decided at the earliest moment. It should not be delayed, otherwise the uncertainty will lead to great hardships. If you see the world experience recently, UK Supreme Court in December ruled that British Prime Minister must get Parliament's approval for invoking Article 50 of Lisbon Treaty to come out of European Union. Similarly, South African Court recently said that the President Jacob Zuma to withdraw from the International Criminal Court was not as per the law, and it is procedurally flawed. Now, final print, or you can say the final conclusion is Supreme Court must be serious when it comes to disputes that pit the individuals against the state. So, some constitutional violations or some order is not as per the law of the land, then when the matter goes to Supreme Court, it must be decided as early as possible. Otherwise, the damage will be done, and subsequently Supreme Court giving its judgment after 2 years, 3 years will not have any relevance. Right, friends? Stepping up to a shared potential, I would like to spend only 1 minute on this, not much in this. This is written by the Australian Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull, and he is on a visit to India. He is visiting from 9th to 12th of this month. He says that India is world's most populous democracy. By 2030, India will become the most populous country. And next point is 3 focus areas he is telling. One is the two-way trade is around $20 billion, but that is too low and there is so much scope for increasing it. So, he says the two-way trade between Australia and India can be increased. Second one is $100 million Australia-India Strategic Research Fund is there, there was a lot of collaboration in areas such as food security and health, nanotechnology, astronomy, and he says that there is a scope for reaching much greater heights. So, he is telling first point is two-way trade can be increased, second one is collaboration in scientific aspects must be expanded. Third important point is 60,000 students came to Australia last year to study, and it is the second most popular study destination for Indian students, and the Indian government is aiming to train 400 million people by 2022, that is skill development. India is planning to undertake skill development of 40 crore people by 2022, and Australia can help India achieving this goal, right. So, these 3 points are put forth by the Australian Prime Minister. He is on visit to India. Last one, most important one, stirring up the nuclear pot, and I am presenting one capsule on NSG, Nuclear Suppliers Group, and India. There I am touching upon various aspects, and this article is something different. This article basically looks at changed circumstances, and he is throwing some light on various nuclear related aspects, right. So, here non-proliferation treaty, you should have idea about non-proliferation treaty as well as IAEA, International Atomic Energy Agency. So, this non-proliferation treaty is international treaty whose objective is to prevent the spread of nuclear weapons and weapons technology. The spread of nuclear weapons and weapons technology must be prevented, and to promote cooperation in the peaceful uses of nuclear energy. To promote cooperation in the peaceful uses of nuclear energy and non-proliferation nuclear technology, at the same time nuclear weapons must not be proliferated. So, here to further the goal of achieving nuclear disarmament, and the treaty entered into force in 1970. There are 191 states signatories. India not signed it, there are some reasons for it, and I will discuss this in the capsule NSG and India. So, here under the treaty, safeguard system is established by giving responsibility to IAEA. What is IAEA? International Atomic Energy Agency. This is basically established with the mandate of nuclear energy must be used for peaceful purposes. There are several applications of nuclear energy for peaceful purposes, and this was set up basically as world's atoms for peace organization. Atoms are required, but they must be for peaceful purposes. So, this is the main purpose of establishing IAEA. Having learnt this, now 3 aspects of non-proliferation treaty. Nuclear non-proliferation treaty, there are 3 aspects. First one is non-proliferation. What is the meaning of non-proliferation? Non-proliferation meaning is to prevent the spread of nuclear weapons and weapons technology. To prevent the spread of nuclear weapons and weapons technology. This is the fundamental goal. And the second important aspect is disarmament. Armament, opposite is disarmament. Here it is the act of reducing, limiting or abolishing the use of nuclear weapons. So, one is non-proliferation, second one is disarmament, then third one is nuclear energy for peaceful purposes. These 3 are fundamental goals of this non-proliferation treaty. One is, let us not proliferate the technology, proliferate the manufacturing of weapons, then reduce, limit or abolish the use of this nuclear weapons. So, here one organization is there, United Nations Office for Disarmament Affairs. This is basically to promote nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation and strengthening of the disarmament regimes and in respect of other weapons of mass destruction like chemical and biological weapons. Please do not forget, out of these weapons of mass destruction, chemical weapons already treaty was signed. Chemical weapons are totally prohibited as per the treaty of 1997 or so. Biological weapons banned because of treaty of 1975. This non-proliferation treaty is basically for avoiding the proliferation of weapons, but not for destroying the existing weapons. Basically, these weapons 90% are held by Russia and United States of America. If both of them come together, entire nuclear weapons can be destroyed, but several countries are telling that these are required for self-deterrent, or you can say as a deterrence. If I have nuclear weapon, the other country will not attack me. So, that is to act as a deterrence. People are just holding nuclear weapons to act as a deterrence. Right. So, this is about 3 aspects of non-proliferation treaty. Ground reality on nuclear issues. This article throws some 5-6 issues. First one is, in due course of time, non-proliferation is not given much importance and concentration is on disarmament. Non-proliferation is not given much importance. Actually, several technologies for enrichment of uranium are within the reach of non-weapon states. Now, enrichment of uranium, this technology is available with several countries. If they want, they can make this manufacturing of nuclear weapons. So, this non-proliferation is not given much importance. Enrichment of uranium. You may have a doubt, what is meant by enrichment of uranium? You see, these are centrifuges, and centrifuges are used for enriching uranium. This you see, this is natural uranium. Natural uranium is 99.2% U-238. U-238 is 99% and U-235 is just 0.7%. So, enrichment basically increases U-235. If U-235 is increased from 0.72% to 5%, then that fuel is known as reactor grade fuel. That fuel is known as reactor grade fuel. If this is increased to 90%, then this nuclear weapons can be manufactured. So, enrichment by using centrifuges, enrichment of uranium is done, that U-235 content can be expanded, that means can be increased. This 90% is required for manufacturing nuclear weapons, and the point here is this technology is available with several countries now. The treaty is not concentrating on non-proliferation because this technology is available with several countries, and Japan and South Korea are also debating the acquisition of nuclear weapons, and the nuclear weapon states mainly USA and Russia are not bothering. Then the second point is International Atomic Energy Agency. What is the purpose of International Atomic Energy Agency? To see that the nuclear energy is used for peaceful purposes, but its more concentration shifted towards nuclear security. So, the concentration is shifted from nuclear, that the purpose of using nuclear energy for peaceful purposes, to nuclear security. Then issue number 3 is more than 120 nations voted on a United Nations General Assembly resolution to convene the conference to negotiate a legally binding treaty to prohibit nuclear weapons. To prohibit nuclear weapons, just like chemical weapons, just like biological weapons, 120 nations came forward, but UK, France, Russia and US said no, and India, China and Pakistan abstained. Nothing came out of it. Next one is after Fukushima. Fukushima accident took place in Japan. After Fukushima, several countries are not in favor of building nuclear power projects. After Fukushima accident, Several countries are not in favor of building nuclear power projects. Only India, China and Russia are showing some interest, and here also in India there are land acquisition problems. Several objections are coming from the people, and at the same time Westinghouse is into bankruptcy problems we have discussed last week. At the same time, the progress of Kudankulam, which is being built with Russian assistance, is not going on the expected lines. Next point is, meanwhile, a debate has begun in India about review of its no first use doctrine. The doctrine adopted in our country is no first use doctrine. That means unless somebody attacks us, that means if someone attacks us, then only we will use nuclear weapons. Nuclear weapons are we are keeping only to act as a deterrent, not for using on for the first time. So, if some country attacks us, we will use them. So, we are keeping nuclear weapons for acting them as deterrent, so that the other country will not attack us. So, there are also contradictory opinions whether we will follow this no first use doctrine or not. That if you look at the domestic front, if you look at the next issue, Donald Trump already called climate change a hoax. Now, he is in process of giving more facilities for reviving the usage of coal. Under these circumstances, whether he will look at nuclear power or not, that is the debatable point. So, under these circumstances, it is not clear how the changing perceptions and global uncertainties will take shape as far as nuclear energy, proliferation of nuclear weapons is concerned. Right. So, this article is with, or you can say it is touching upon several aspects as on date prevalent globally. Right friends, we will conclude editorial discussion. Please do join at 12:30. That is with regard to the English Made Simple second session today. Have a nice day. Thank you.